It's only music with the rock professor Brad and Andrew.
Hey, this is Philip Sace, and you are watching the 5150 Show with Brad and Andrew. All right.
Happy birthday! Happy birthday, Eric Clapton! Woohoo!
Yes.
Oh my word!
Grab your drinks, folks.
yeah.
Well done.
Not quite the same, is it? A cup of tea, but anyway.
No. But be free. You can drink a Coke early in the morning if you want, Simon.
Okay, all right.
I'm glad you said drink. I'm glad you said drink, Andrew.
Hey, good to see you guys. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to find something here while we're talking. Just give me a second to get. Here we go. We've got Brody here with us. Here he is.
Yeah. That's
Yes.
going, Andrew.
Good to see you, Brody. Brody's a good friend of the channel. You've been on the channel a few times, Brody, hanging out with us over the years, haven't you, brother?
Yeah, a few times. So it seems like every time that I look grayer and grayer every time we get on here.
And it all goes white.
Yeah, turn gray or turn loose. You know, one of the two.
Well, yeah. Well, we could do something about it if we wanted, but we won't. We'll be natural. We'll go natural. That's always the best thing to do. Stay natural.
Be honest.
Be honest. We've got some people in here, so we're going to be doing a shout out soon. But obviously, folks, welcome to the channel. It's a special celebration. The Rock Professor pointed out early in the week that today was Eric's birthday. And normally in the past on the channel, we've always done a show a week or a couple of days later, Brad, haven't we? So the fact that the Rock Professor can join us to participate on a birthday celebration, not only is he turning 80, which in itself is a celebration, you know,
That's Eric, by the way, not me.
Yes. He's been a huge part of our lives. In fact, you know, he's the one thing really that got us all together. He's the one thing that got this channel going, and he's the one thing that the constant musically in my life that I'm happy to sort of say is the man. So thank you, Simon, for jumping on, because you should have been in recovery.
Yeah, I should have had the bolts inserted already, but it got postponed for a week, so it's happening this Wednesday. Everything crossed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brody, I don't know if you know, I'm having a vertebra. I'm having neck surgery on Wednesday. I'm having a vertebrae removed from my neck and a cage put in, or 2 bolts, so
Yeah. Oh, all the best. All the
Thank
best.
you very much. Yes, I'm so looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yes, we invite you folks, if you're watching on a replay and here in the chat, to send your prayers and positive vibes to the Rock Professor and to his family over the next few days. And if all goes well, he'll be back. Could be next week, but certainly the week after, Simon. You'll keep us in the loop anyway.
Yeah, probably. I guess I don't. I have no idea how I'm going to feel 5 days after it happened. So let's see how we go.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, well,
And Brad, good to see you in that studio, bro. You making use of that studio?
not yet, but yes, I'm just warming up all the equipment. Yeah,
Takes 2 weeks to warm up.
I haven't really. I'm going to probably sound really terrible. I haven't touched my guitar in about 2 weeks, maybe more. So I've got to make time. But it's all good. It's all good. Moving these days takes a long time. It's not something that back in the day when I was in my 20s, I used to be able to move and unpack in 2 days. It'd be done.
Wow.
I seem to have accumulated quite a lot of stuff.
Yeah. It's amazing what you can do.
And there's only so much you can fit in a day when you've got to work a full-time job as well. So, yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Sorry about that, bro. I wanted to solo stand. I've got that T-shirt too. Can you stand up, bro?
This
Can you show us that?
I got this one at Albert Hall. Up. Hang on.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's from Royal Albert Hall. I don't know if you can see the back.
Yeah.
Wow. Lovely.
That's from May 21st last year, Royal Albert Hall.
No, I haven't got that T-shirt. I've got that design on the top where it says Clapton and signature in that color and another design. So that's why I asked you to pop up, because I was quite intrigued to have a look at that. So yeah. Thank you for doing that.
One of my favorites. I only wear it for special occasions, Andrew. So.
Could I say, on the subject of T-shirts, Mr. Walton, I don't know what you did, but T-shirts are now available in the UK.
Fantastic.
Our T-shirts for the channel, which is brilliant. I just noticed today. I thought, blimey, it says 6 items, not 1. So yeah, the mugs, but also the T-shirts, which is fantastic.
Good.
Well done.
Good.
I don't know what you did there, but you fixed it.
You don't want to know. We'll talk about this off here. But
really difficult. Yes, good. That's right.
Yeah. We don't want to talk about channel business live, but it's good to see that that's working. So we're going to get together, folks, in the chat. We've got Jim here and a couple of other good friends. The Rock Professor is going to do a shout out soon. So. But yeah, we're going to get together. We're going to share some stories, some thoughts and opinions on Eric Clapton for ourselves and as a collective, because he's a big part of this channel. So I suppose, Brody, we're gonna get you to start thinking quickly about some Eric Clapton things while the Rock Professor does a shout out, because we're going to get you to talk about Eric Clapton and what he means to you and the significance of his music. Get you kicking the ball off, brother.
No pressure, huh?
No pressure. Yeah. Guess go first. Yes, after you. Dear legendary politeness from us, Brody. No, after you.
It's chivalrous.
Yeah. So in the chat, we've got Nelson Rodriguez. Morning, Nelson. And Ellen, of course. Good morning, Ellen. Hope you're well. Gretch Zeppelin. Morning, Gretch. We've got Jazz Thunder 50. Jim. Morning, Jim. Hope you're good. Thanks for getting up. And we've got Dwight Bailey. Morning, Dwight. Nice to see you. Hope you're well. Dwight's very prolific on the stuff he puts out. So check him out if you haven't. There's lots of fun there. Some bloke called Brad Cook, a bloke called Simon Williams, never heard of him. And Tony Bowen, of course. Good morning, Tony. Nice to see you. I hope you're well too. So, and we've had already we've had 25 thumbs up. So thank you to everyone who thumbed up the show. That's very cool. Before we even started.
There you go.
Oh, Nelson's here
That-
too. Good
yeah.
to see you, Nelson. Thank you.
Yeah. Fantastic. Good to see everyone. Very-
Jim, do you want to jump on where you are? I know it's short notice, but there's an invitation there, Jim, if you wanted to jump on and hang out with us. We're going to be live for about an hour and a half, maybe a little bit longer. But if you want to jump on, Jim.
Yeah, by all means.
Brody, Mr.
Yeah.
Clapton.
Yeah, my doppelganger, huh? It's like, except I'm 30 years younger, but we look the same age, I think, now.
That's not bad.
You still look like a young chap there, Brody.
Well, maybe your eyes are bad.
They are.
There we are. Very cool.
Okay. So the conversation's Eric Clapton. So I suppose I'll kick it off then. Eric Clapton, guys, for me, he was the guy that started it all. And when I say that, not when I was younger, not when I was 13 or 14, he wasn't a huge influence in my life when I was that young. He was certainly a part of, the pantheon of guitar heroes that you start collecting. He was on there, but it wasn't until I got much older, into my late 20s, Brad, where Eric Clapton started having some kind of significance. And that came about mainly because of 24 Nights. We've discussed this a few times already on the channel. That album Journeyman, when that came out in '88, and a couple of songs on there, being in the top 10. And all of a sudden, Eric Clapton was, without sounding corny, Simon, he was a pop hero. He was in the top 10. He was on popular radio stations. And I think, for me, that's when Clapton became a significant part of my life. And then certainly '94, when they released From the Cradle, that had a huge influence on a group of friends that I was hanging out with as well. And I think probably for me, Brody, that was the period that I went back around '94, '95 and seriously renegotiated that music that Clapton produced before then. And that included the Layla stuff, that he did, and Cream, seriously listening to Cream and just been blown away by it. So that's my little bit of an introduction into Clapton to get the ball started, Simon.
Yes. Well, I'm a bit before you. So, clearly, I started by, as I've said a million times on the channel, to apologies, I started buying records about 1972. And of course, Eric was still was it? Yeah, Cleric. There we are. That's a concatenation of Eric and Clapton. Nice.
Very, very good.
Eric the Cleric. Yes, that's never been said before, is it? Eric the Cleric. But, so he was big in the rock news of the day in 1972. Still, Layla hadn't been long now. And of course, Cream was still a recent history then, and go back 6 years or whatever it is, and you're into Cream. It's actually 4, isn't it? Is it? Yeah, 4 or 5 years. So he was always one of those big rock stars. In the early '70s, you're reading Melody Maker or The Enemy. He's always appearing in that, and his records were reviewed and stuff. And he had, clearly moving forward a bit, he had hits like 461 on 461 Ocean Boulevard, I Shot the Sheriff. I think it was a big hit in the UK. I think so. he's always part of the rock firmament, and one of the pillars of it, really. And so it's been a part of my musical life since then, really. Going forward. And in the early '80s, before I went to university, I spent 3 years working in a record shop in Bristol, and for the late great Tony Dodd, and we went to see Clapton together. He was a big Clapton fan, Tony, and fine guitar player as well on his own right. But so we went to see him at the Colston Hall together, and 1982, I think, something like that. 81, 82. Yeah, he's a big fan, and supporting him were another of Tony's favorites, Chaz and Dave, were supporting Eric that day. And, Chaz and Dave, we had them for a signing in the shop. That was fun. Beer. Right, what about you?
Oh, look, yeah, Eric Clapton, what can I say? He's been a massive part of, who I am as a guitar player, a musician, even down to me, stepping out and giving vocals a shot, I thought if Eric can do it, then I can do it, because I found there was that little bit of a push there. I'm very similar to you, Andrew. We've discussed it before. I was very familiar with Cream, being a massive Hendrix fan. Obviously, Cream, where I was, listening to Cream as well. The classic trio thing I fell in love with. I loved the trios, and I loved Clapton, his work with Cream and whatnot. But I became a massive fan through the 24 Nights era that came out. I saw it on MTV. It was called The Four Faces of Eric Clapton on MTV. And then obviously 24 Nights came out, started going backwards and listening to Ocean Boulevard, Layla, and other assorted love songs, all those. But that's that era that Andrew's showing there is from the 24 Nights sort of, era for Clapton, where he was in his early 40s, I think, there, late 30s, early 40s, I think. And, he was playing that pewter grey Strat that I fell in love with, and just that tone he had at the time with the Soldano, and the whole thing, the production was outstanding. And then going backwards, listening to his earlier solo stuff from the 70s, and really finding a bit of a connection there for me, because I loved the blues and I loved his style, the blues, the way he was doing it. At the same time, I was becoming a Stevie Ray Vaughan fan and a Gary Moore fan and all that as well. So I still, to this day, am still a massive fan of all those artists as well. But Eric, every time he released something, I was always rushing out. From the Cradle was the next one, obviously from 24 Nights, and really smacked me across the head like a ton of bricks. I was gobsmacked with his playing on that, and how well he was singing, and to realize that it was predominantly all live. I thought to myself, this guy's just next level to be able to pull that off. But his band that he had at the time were exceptional as well. So not only just an Eric Clapton fan, but a fan of his bands that he's had, the musicians he's played with. And one of the recurring ones would be Nathan East as well, as a bass player, and become big fans of his band, the bands that he's had supporting him and backing him as well. But even to this day, I was listening to Eric Clapton today because it is his birthday, and I'm driving back from the city with my partner. We went to do something and drove back, and listening to Clapton, and Wonderful Tonight comes on, Layla. It's like a playlist of the greatest hits of Eric Clapton, and you just never really get sick of it. And I will say this, though, his vocals just seem to have gotten better and better and better all the way through. From the Cradle, he's singing outstanding. Like, some of his best vocal performances are on that record, I think. 24 Nights, every live performance post there. Even when he got up with Joe Bonamassa at Royal Albert Hall and just totally wipe the floor. He just got up and played with Bonamassa. Vocally, he just steps up to the mic, and he's got that vocal presence. He's playing a Strat plugged into his Fender that he's just plonked on stage for the gig. Obviously, he just rocked up, and he's just a player. He's one of those guys. I've had the pleasure of seeing him a few times, guys. I've seen him in Sydney at Entertainment Centre a few times. I saw him 3 times on his 2007 tour. Andrew, that was the same tour you saw him in New Zealand, I think.
2008. Yeah.
2007 and 8. I think it was 2007 here in Australia. I've seen him since then, and I recently saw him at Royal Albert Hall, as we just mentioned before. So last year, which was, just I'm planning a trip to, London, going to the UK, and just by chance I looked at Eric's page, and holy hell, he's playing at Royal Albert Hall. So I said to my partner, "Oh, well, have we got anything booked?" She had a heavy schedule. Simon, you know the schedule I had.
Yes, I do.
And I looked and I said, "We haven't got anything on the 21st." And she goes, "No." I said, "We're going to Eric Clapton at Royal Albert Hall," and I just got goosebumps. Just the thought of that. To see Eric Clapton at Royal Albert Hall was something that I'd only dreamt about. So to actually be there, I let my hair down literally. I had a glass or 2 of red wine, bourbon and Coke as well, and stuff that I hadn't done. I thought, why not? Because I'm here seeing Eric Clapton, yeah, why not? And at Royal Albert Hall, and it was mind-blowing. It was mind-blowing to be there. So I'm still buzzing about it every time I look at photos and watch a bit of footage of it, think about it. It's just outstanding. But I could waffle on for days about Eric Clapton, but he's a massive influence, and still continues to be for me every day.
Thank you, bro. We've got some pics that will show from Brad when he was at that gig, folks, later on during the course of the show. So thank you for flicking those through, Brad. That's really cool. And I have to take my hat off to the Rock Professor and Simon for a succinct little introduction on Eric Clapton. We've got to turn it over now to Brody. So, Brody, Mr. Clapton, Eric Clapton.
Eric Clapton is, multiple levels of everything. For me, not just as a guitar nerd right here, but when I was a kid, my parents were, I got to grow up with some fantastic music, and we'd get in the car and there was great music. We were in the house, there was great music. And my dad actually looked exactly like that 80s, early 80s, late 70s, early 80s Eric Clapton. My dad looked exactly like that. And
wow.
So, I got to grow up listening to, trying to think. Well, the Layla record, was always a big deal. But I think the one that made the biggest impression was Slow Hand. I remember it was, came out in 77, I think, somewhere around there. And just the cover of it, the head of the Stratocaster. And there was a visual thing. And of course, all the great songs on there. And my parents, just played that all the time. And what was I, 5, 6? I was born in 73. So at that point, that's probably what made me really want to, dig in and play. But those songs, were just amazing. Those, and the way he sang them, and of course the guitar playing. But it was like this force. And when it's part of your childhood and your parents talk about it, and you're just surrounded by it, it's just what it just was. So I remember looking at the albums and listening to them, and then the Just One Night record came out, and I remember playing, like the live version of Cocaine all the time. I loved that version of it. And further on up the road, there was a couple of ones where I'd listen, and of course I'm 6, 7 years old, and I'm like, I don't like that song, or I don't like that song sounds old, whatever. So I was trying to, I was grabbing what was relevant then, or what was new then, or fresh to me. But then, before 24 Nights, I went back. Let's see, when the box set came out. Remember the Crossroads box set? I remember one year I'd gotten enough money as Christmas gifts from my grandparents, from probably my parents, whatever. And I remember that year I wanted to go buy that box set, and my parents were like, "Are you sure you want to spend that much money on it? Are you really sure?" And that's when the CDs were there. So that's when I went back, and there were some great, songs on that box set, but I went all the way back, even to the Yardbirds on that one. And,
Yeah.
I think my dad's favorite era was probably Cream, where it started for him, but then, you got into Blind Faith, and just, I think the first time I ever heard Layla, it was just like this, just force of nature, even the production of 1970, it was just, when I listen to the original now, it still gets me, so, and of course, learning to play guitar, I wanted a Stratocaster, just like his, and trying to think, that would have been, well, when I graduated high school, it was right around the time those Clapton Strats were coming out. And that was, I remember seeing the first one in a store, and knowing they were coming out. It was like, I had to have, one of those guitars. I was so, and that's when all the shredders were going on. But at that point, there was this thing, there was a timeless thing there. Even in the 80s, you knew that wasn't going to last for long, but Clapton would always be Clapton. And and of course, after August, and then when Journeyman came out, it was like, that was a whole different level of like, wow, this is just, when you think this can't get any bigger, any better, any more influential, whatever. It just, that record came out, and it was, even the way he dressed, he looked as classy as everything sounded. And that was that, like you guys mentioned, that pewter Strat. There was just something just classy about the whole thing. You just felt like you were at a 5-star restaurant or something. It was all just top shelf all the way around. And so, and then of course, from there, 24 Nights and the remakes of all that stuff, especially Badge on 24 Nights. I mean, everything, those songs all held up, and they sounded good, in 1991 or when 24 Nights came out. And that's when a lot of the guys were going into their, into the, teenage kids playing guitar, and they were down the Van Halen path, which was awesome. But I took the, the Clapton road, and just stayed in all of that, got into, a lot deeper into George Harrison and some of the other, things around that era. But, of course, when From the Cradle came out, it was like a whole different thing, but just as powerful, or if not more. So I, got to see him several times. I think the first time was 92, I think, in Philadelphia at the Spectrum, and that was part of the, the 24 Nights era. And I mean, just unbelievable. I mean, he came out and did sort of that four section thing, bits and spatterings of that, and then saw him. One of my big regrets is missing the From the Cradle tour. I was in college, and I was always the geeky type that I would never cut class or never not study or anything. And a friend of mine had tickets to go see that, and I said, "No, I have an exam tomorrow. I have to study for that." And one of my regrets in life is I wish I would have just winged it and gone and seen that. But so then there was another tour, and then on the One More Car, One More Rider era, got to see that. It was really good. And think one other time, and then the most recent time here was, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. He was in Nashville. Yeah, 2 or 3 years ago. Jimmy Vaughn, was opening up for him, and of course, if he's around, I want to go. And
Sure.
the most, call it that pilgrimage, is to see him in the Albert Hall. And I remember my dad's health was pretty bad, but back in that era, like 2005, that period of time, I always wanted. I said, why don't we hop over and go see Cream at the Albert Hall? But at that point, he just wasn't, mobile, real mobile at that point. So we ended up not doing that. But at some point, I want to see him there. But the funny story about when I saw him in Nashville the last time, 2 years ago or whenever that was, I think I've shared with you guys before. A friend of mine co-wrote the song "Change the World," and he's the biggest Clapton nerd you've ever met. I mean, just like us, he loves it. Got to meet him for like a few minutes at the Grammys that year. But when we went to go see that show, I went with him. It was him and some friends of ours, and he, we go into the show and he's wearing a Martin shirt, and a couple of guys along the way asked him, "Oh, do you have a Martin? Do you have nobody knew who he was." So, which was kind of funny. And then, he comes on, he actually played the song, that played "Change the World" at the thing. And I looked over at him and I said, that's a pretty good song. I think you ought to release that one. So it was, just good fun there. So even guys that write songs for him, he's influenced the best of the best in so many people. I mean, his staying power and just, his, transitions, from eras, from one era to another. It's like there's always this common thread, but he's, whether he's even start after the Yardbirds, from Cream, and, when he was in his Gibson phase, and then the Fender phase, and then when he was, just everything he does is he's made it a thing, and a thing that makes people want to do the same thing.
Wow. Wonderful. We've got some people that have just jumped on, guys, to say hello. So we've got Steve Anderson here jumping in,
Steve.
saying "Bad Love" is his favorite song. And Nelson, we've already done a shout out to Nelson, and John, our good friend ZD351, has joined us. So
John.
Let us know in the chat, folks.
Mark Tanner as well. Mark Tanner.
Oh,
Nice
yeah,
to see
Mark.
you, Mark.
Good. Let us know, folks, in the chat, what you think of Eric Clapton, the good and the bad. We can take it, because clearly we're all fanboys here. One of the things, and thank you, Brody, for sharing your experience, because that's what it's about. That's what these hangouts are about, mate. Sharing them and getting that passion from you, and taking that forward, because I know after we've done this show, I'm going to go through a Clapton phase. I just for at least another week, I'm just going to be going crazy on Clapton, which isn't a bad thing. But one of the things that I'd like to talk to you guys about, and I think that's one of the reasons why we sort of gelled so much as a collective. And I'm going to include you too, Brody, and also Michael, and also Jim. Yeah. Michael, also a good friend of the channel. He's been on a couple of times. And if he watches this, we want to do a special shout out to you, Michael. Thank you for supporting us, brother. Another Clapton nut from the States. But one of the things that I liked about talking to you guys individually, but also collectively on the channel, is that you guys have appreciated all the eras of Eric Clapton. You mentioned it, Brody, from the Yardbirds, Cream, the Derek and the Dominos era, Brad and Simon. We talk about the shows that we did, ranking that album. I think we did 3 shows on that album. and then obviously the Journeyman and the early 70s period when he was coming out of his addiction, and just right through. And you know, we just celebrate it all, and I firmly believe that we do. And it's sort of in contrast to people that you meet when they say, "Oh, you know, Clapton sucks after Cream." It's like, okay, yeah, okay. And there's a few people I know that think like that, Brody. You know, and it's like, you know, you know, the Layla album's a boring album. It's like, really? Okay. I know music is personal, you know, Simon and Brad. I know it's personal, but you know, one of the things that we, you know, do here is that we, you know, we get into all the eras and we love it.
Absolutely.
I've definitely heard people comment like that, Andrew, that they, you know, after Cream, you know, they went, you know, Clapton lost it, but I think you got a little bit. I understand if people like Cream and then moving forward they didn't appreciate what he did after that. I understand that because music is personal, and but I think I'm a bit different to that way in the sense where I like to hear a musician evolve and go in any direction that they wish to go in, and a fan will follow that direction usually, unless it's something completely and utterly left of what, you know, they stand for within their heart. Because the majority of the time we listen to Eric Clapton because you want to hear Clapton, and I'll put on Cream when I want to hear that sort of style and him playing like that. I'll put on John Mayall and the Blues Breakers when I want to hear that tone. I'll put on 24 Nights, especially the remastered box set that came out recently. I'll put that on and I'll listen to it in my car as I'm driving along, just going, this sounds absolutely phenomenal. And then I'll get sick of that and I'll want to hear the unplugged sessions, you know. So I think at the end of the day, an artist has the right to evolve. That, I mean, you wouldn't expect Eric Clapton to play Cream and play that way for as long as he has, all the way from his 20s through to 80, because, you know, I think that that would be boring within itself as well to hear him doing that all the time. I appreciate an artist when they try to invent themselves a little bit. But he's always been fairly true and pure to what he loved the most, which is the blues. So I think we can all maybe relate to, you know, a certain era that we all love about Clapton, but we can all appreciate other eras of Clapton as well, because that's the evolution of Eric Clapton. That's where he led to. That's where he wanted to go at that particular time. Right or wrong it may have been, he moved on and did something different the next time. And, you know, there's certain Clapton stuff that I listen to now that I didn't really appreciate 10 years ago as well. And I listen to it with a lot more appreciation now, because at the end of the day, that's how I think now. It's like, oh, I'm going to put on Ocean Boulevard and listen to that because I haven't listened to that in a year or two. And then it sounds amazing to me when I listen to it. I love it. And then if I've listened to Cream too much, I'll put on 24 Nights and I go, wow, this is the best guitar tone I've ever heard. You know what I mean? So what I'm getting at is I could go around in circles and circles like I am forever. But I think at the end of the day, if you love an artist and you appreciate what they're doing, you tend to go for the ride with them. And I love the journeyman thing. Like he's on his own journey. That's how I always saw it. You know what I mean? He's on his journey. He's doing his thing, and his fans go along with him. I mean, you look at ZZ Top, for example, how much they evolved over their creative, you know, history as a band together. We could go on for days about band. Look at the Beatles, how they changed from early 60s to 1970. I mean, they completely changed, really. I mean, so, and that was in a 10-year period less. That was, you know, so Zeppelin, for example. So, you know, every band changes and every artist changes. And I think if you sit back and appreciate it instead of judging it, you tend to like all eras of Clapton. That's just my personal opinion on it, gentlemen. you know.
And you have to grow as an artist, don't you? You can't stay in one place. You can't, you know. And clearly, you know, he's always been that artist who moved forward, you know, through the Yardbirds, Cream, out of Cream, and then getting much more into that band thing, you know, being influenced by the band, you know, and then following, you know, then going back to his blues roots, you know, but going through the 80s is that very sort of, as you said, the suited period, you know, playing more sort of modern stuff, but then circling back to more his roots, you know, and going back to the blues stuff, and later on, and picking that up and intermingling all of it into what he does now. So, you know, I think, you know, you can name any artist with that sort of longevity, and that's what they've had to do, haven't they? They've had a restless spirit, and they've done different things, different areas, different influences at different times in their careers.
Yeah, I thought his biggest departure was, you know, over everything was Pilgrim.
Yeah, 100%. And Old Sock.
Yeah, and you know, Old Sock, and even that though, it's like it made sense because of the way he introduced the record. You know, those were the songs he said those weren't songs he had to do; they were just songs that were him. He, you know, grew up and played, so it's almost like that was the beginning. You know, it's like he's going. It's like a Star Wars movie. You know, you've seen the later ones first, and then you know he went back and did that one, but yeah, so that one was, you know, really good. And then what was the one just called Clapton? You know, the one that
2010.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
You know, yeah, that one. You know, there was some great, you know, sort of deep cuts on there of way back for him. But I thought the Pilgrim, you know, with a lot of the programming and a lot of the just the production approach to it was the most different thing to me. Like, where did that come from? You know, but you listen to the song, like on the One More Car, One More Rider, when he does when he does the acoustic version of Broken Hearted. I mean, what a great song, you know. But then the other one, River of Tears, that live version of River of Tears is so different than the Pilgrim record. But you talk about a, you know, just shake the room, you know, rendition of that song. So just,
and she's gone as well.
Yeah. Same thing.
Yeah, 100%. You know, the on One More Car, One More Rider, that version just topples. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good point, Brody. Good point.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry for interrupting, Bray.
There's still an element of blues there though. When you listen to those songs, you can still hear there's some deep bedded blues, like, you know, anchor point, starting point, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's just they just evolved into what that was a definite departure from anything he'd done though. When that album came out, I was on tour at the time, and I remember it coming out going, Eric Clapton? Is this Clapton?
Yeah, me too.
You know, I was a bit shocked, but yeah. But yeah, that was an interesting record at the time when it came out. But even listening to that these days, I've got a newfound appreciation for it than when it originally came out.
Ooh. That's interesting, because I don't think I have. Yeah. I look, I think it's worth listening to, Brody. You know, I think, you know, obviously we're Clapton nuts, and you know, there's a couple of albums that will always point someone out, you know, to that hasn't heard Clapton. Like, for example, you mentioned Slow Hand. You know, you can't go wrong with Slow Hand or the Layla album or Journeyman. But you wouldn't get somebody, Brody, that one of your work colleagues that didn't really know Clapton, you wouldn't point them to Pilgrim, would you?
Not first.
No.
No. You point it, you get them on the path, and they'll find it somewhere along the way.
Yeah. I look forward to ranking that album with you, Brad.
Look, I'm a bit more open these days to music than I was even 10 years ago, probably, Andrew, to be honest with you. I appreciate things a bit differently now. You know, especially now that those albums came out quite a while ago now. They're not just recent albums when you think about it. They came out quite a while ago now. So, yeah.
Well, there's a couple of other things that I want to ask you guys, and we'll go around in a sort of like a round table kind of thing. I'm going to throw it at Brody first, and then we'll pass it on to you, Brad, and then the Rock Professor. So, Brody, a couple of things came out. You know, obviously we're Clapton fans. Clapton's biography came out. When was that? 2008. You know, and there was a big push here in New Zealand behind that. I remember the bookstores having a bit of a display, and it was a popular biography here. Went on to become a top seller. So obviously I bought it, devoured it within 2 days. I've read it probably 3 or 4 times over the years, and I use that as a point of reference whenever we go live and we're going to be talking about Clapton, because I go to that to see what Clapton has to say about a particular era, Brody, you know, or an album or a band that we might be talking about, just to sort of back myself up on a couple of points. So obviously we had the biography, and a few years ago, 24 Nights, Life in 12 Bars. The biography film came out. So again, we devoured that. We did a show talking about that live too, guys. So Brody, you got some thoughts on the biography and also the film that you want to share? Is there anything that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're all the fanboys. I think we probably, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I suspect you guys are the same way. You know, when I jumped into the book before the movie, but I was looking for that what am I going to find out in here that I didn't already know? You know, because when you dig that deep, you've read all the, you know, the articles, and you know the stories, and you know of him growing up and the addiction, and you know, finding out about his family and all that stuff. But it was interesting to hear about all of those things, or a lot of the things that we already knew about, but like directly from him, you know, from the book, as opposed to an editor or somebody, you know, pulling it out of him in an interview or something. So and to me, it almost felt like I was trying to figure out, did he do it, you know, out of an obligation, or, you know, was somebody pushing it to, publish the dirt because people are interested or whatever. But I really got the impression, both from the book and from the Life in 12 Bars, that it was him just being really, you know, brutally honest about, this is what happened to me. And, you know, this was the era of it, and really, you know, admitting his lows, and, you know, maybe even, you know, making amends for that. I mean, he even said that there were eras when he was really, you know, not dependable, and he felt bad about that. And, you know, I think he even called himself a womanizer, and it was almost like he was, you know, apologizing for the things that he knew weren't right, or weren't what he now knows to be right, you know, and very much loving that last era, you know, these last 20 plus years of his life, of just being a normal guy, you know, being married and having kids and a family. And it, you know, the one thing I got from that book is, like, he desperately wanted a family, you know, a really traditional, you know, thing. And you know, because I think a lot of people want that, but I suspect it was because he never had it. And that was one of the things that jumped out at me more, you know, not so much of the musical things. It was interesting to hear his take on a few things, but I didn't, from a musical lineage and things, I didn't learn much new from the musical side of him from there. But it was really great to learn more about him as the guy, him as the dad, him as the the husband, and him as the friend, the way would treat people, even just from a social standpoint. It's like he goes out of his way almost to shed the fact that he's Eric Clapton. It's just, hey, I'm a guy who grew up this way, and this is what I wanted, and I have it now, and I'm quite happy. And as an addict, recovering addict, you can tell he's really, really passionate about the Crossroads cause, and he obviously knows firsthand what that stuff can do to a person, and you can tell it's his passion. So
I think that's
Wonderful,
that's
Brady.
one of the things, isn't it, that makes the biography really good, is that post addiction, you ask Eric Clapton a question, he'll give you an answer, and it'll be an honest answer. And I think that's one of the that makes it an interesting read, because it's not, he's not nearly so concerned with his public image or whatever. You ask a question, he'll give you a straightforward, truthful answer. And I think that's that post addiction self assessment you have to do to yourself, and reassess who you are and what you're doing and stuff. And I think that's it makes it a really good biography. And I've read some pretty anodyne biographies of people, clearly, written with two eyes on their public persona and stuff. And but that's not the case with Eric. So I think it's really good.
I mean,
Brad.
for me, guys, I mean, without sort of elaborating too much on what you said, Brody, because I agree 100% with everything you said, and Simon. For me, it kind of made sense after seeing the biography and reading it, seeing Life 12 Bars and reading the biography. It made a lot of sense to me how complicated he is as a person, and that actually was a result of some things I was unaware of, obviously, from his past. And it made a lot of sense with him moving forward, the changes he made in his music, the direction. Whenever he would sort of get too comfortable, he changed things around because he just wanted to change that as, I guess, to challenge himself. But it also, made a lot of sense, with the direction of music he would go in, but he would always come back to the blues. He'd always come back to that as being his where his heart laid. And I think more throughout his career as he's gotten older, he's embraced. I think he seems like he's settled with his past a little bit. So I think maybe he needed to do that as part of his healing journey. Maybe, guys, that's how I thought of it at the time.
Had to.
Yeah, I
He
think
had
it
to,
was
bro.
Yeah.
part of
He had
his
to.
healing journey to get, to put it out there and let it go, I guess, is that whole thing of you putting it out there to let it go so you can move forward in a more positive direction, instead of having all that sort of withheld within yourself and negative energy and whatnot that's from a lot of those things that he went through, the trials and tribulations of his childhood, his even to losing his son and things like that. Like, all those things definitely affected him as a human. So I think
Yeah. I think you're right, bro. And that's one of the great things about the biography. And I think we've all nailed it on the head. It's an apology as well. It's an apology to people that he's met over the years as well. Brody, you mentioned it before, that he was a womanizer, and he talks about, the relationships that he had with some woman in the biography, and, talks about that he wasn't particularly a nice person to be around, for a long, long time, and it's an apology, Brad. You're right, and it's part of that healing process that you have to do. And if you read through the lines, you can see that it's one of those biographies, you know, that gives you that understanding or that appreciation. I like that. He doesn't badmouth anybody. He doesn't drop the dirt guys on anybody. In fact, if he's going to be critical, it's about himself, you know, which is you know what? Yeah, fair enough. What it should be, Brad. You know, it's about him as the person, as the man. And there's been lots of interviews we've seen on YouTube where he talks about that. You know, I wasn't particularly a nice person to be around. And what one person asked him recently, you know, if he wasn't smashed off his face for so many years, would he be a better guitar player today? And he sticks his hand up, Brody, and he says, undoubtedly I would have been.
Yeah.
Got pretty good anyway, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that stuff just, you know, it robs you, you know, your time and all that. But I mean, and the other thing that came through in that too is, I mean, he had a lot of hurt, you know, and you know, probably so much he didn't even know how to deal with it, especially, you know, the story that he tells in there. I think it was in the movie, you know, where his biological mother and husband and family come back, and, you know, there's a visit, and, you know, he's got to, you know, goes and gets a haircut, you know, really, you know, goes from that identity that he had with the long hair and all that as a, you know, young kid. I mean, the real impressionable ages. And then, you know, I think it was also in there too, somebody sits on his guitar and breaks it. And, you know, it's like, just when he tries to get back up and it's just, you know, one step up and two steps back, you know, it seemed like on there. So he's grown up with, you know, quite a lot of baggage. So
that was very strange, his childhood situation, wasn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Canadian soldier father and being brought up by his grandmother, thinking that she was his mother.
Mm-hmm.
His mum was his.
Yeah, and the woman saying, you know, you're not coming with us, you know, when he found out, you know, and you're right, Brody, and him getting the haircut so that he can fit in, you know, and his stepbrother, if you can call him that, sitting on his guitar, purposely sitting on his guitar and breaking his guitar, and, you know, the only thing that he had of value, Brad, you know, that was who he was, you know, that guitar. And we're all guitar players. Just imagine if somebody sat on your first guitar, Brody.
Hey.
It'd be pretty hard to forgive them.
Still time.
Yeah.
Hey, what did Mike Tyson do in that fight?
Yeah, and in the movie when he even says, you know, once he finds out that, you know, that she's who his natural biological mother is, and then says, oh, okay, now that we know all these things, now, you know, I'll be part of this. And it was, and she shot him down, you know, really pretty bluntly, like wow, you know, just, you know, to tell a kid that, you know, at that age, it's that must have been really, I don't know if you ever really get over that. You know, it's like it's the ultimate rejection, as blunt as it could be.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. It's definitely all those sort of things I was unaware of until that documentary. I mean, I kind of knew a little bit about Eric's past and history, but didn't realize it was so full on like that until the biography and the movie. Actually, to be honest with you, I knew he had a past from reading stuff and that, but he went into a lot of detail that I had no idea about. Some of the stuff, I was like, wow, I was blown away the first time reading it. You know, I
think that his story is not uncommon in that post-war period. People, I mean, I can speak from my own experience. My mum had a half sister who when my grandfather came back from the war, he fought in Italy and stuff, and won the military medal in Italy. He found this family unit that he didn't really fit into. So he went off. He went off and had an affair with somebody called Penelope Mortimer, and they had a daughter. So my mum had a sort of stepsister, and that only came out in the early '60s, I think, when Debbie, the stepsister, the half sister, had written a play that was on TV about it. So that's quite. So I don't think that kind of merging of of the way histories and people's convoluted histories after the war is necessarily an uncommon thing. And I think Eric could be, in with lots of other people who had that sort of experience.
Sure.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah,
not
it's a sad story. And sorry, Brady.
Oh no, I'm not a psychiatrist or anything, but you look at the inability to commit to things. It was only a handful of years after that, in the Yardbirds, and then being quite young in from there with John Mayall, and I think at that point it was just him just not being not having any stickiness to anything. It's like he'd been pulled off of whatever he tried to attach to so many times that that was a problem. And then you look through that era, and then of course the lifestyle and the drugs and things, and then look at the he's 25 years old, and before he documents the Layla situation, but that Layla and other sort of love songs, it's like that was a pretty deep blow to him too, trying to connect with her on that that level with Patty Boyd and Patty Harrison, whatever. It was just like one inability to achieve what he was pursuing after another.
I'm glad, Brady, you mentioned that, because that was the next segment of questions that we were going to do a roundtable conversation on. One of the great things about YouTube over the last 4 or 5 years is the videos and the channels and the oral histories, that people close to this music that we like have provided us. In particular, Bobby Whitlock on his channel has gone into length and extreme details about Derek and the Dominos, how the band formed, what led up to the formation of the band, what happened when the band was the band, and the demise of the band. And I urge anybody who hasn't checked those out to set aside chunks of your year and go and listen to a lot of those videos. Admittedly, the videos that Bobby offers aren't long. They're about 20 minutes long, 30 minutes long, but there's a lot of them. And one of the things that I particularly like is he's fixed up a lot of the stories that we've heard over the years, cleared some of the rumors away. There's a couple that I'd like to talk about, but I'll let you guys have a conversation first before I mention that. And also Patty Boyd. Patty Boyd herself has gone on to record and spoken about this album and what led up to the album, and her pivotal role in that album, and her hearing that album for the first time, guys, and realizing, my gosh, she knew that this album was about her. And she knew that when people listened to that album, they would know everything about what her and Eric had been doing. It's just, phenomenal. So Simon, we've done some great shows on that Layla album, and it's been a big part of our lives. And in fact, you were there when the album was released. So you got some thoughts on, that, on Bobby's comments and that album in particular?
That's an extraordinary record, isn't it? And I think it's an example of, I don't know whether make no judgment about it, but that the turmoil in somebody's personal life can produce great art. That thing about, and you want to talk, Bob Dylan, getting divorced from Sarah Dylan, produces Blood on the Tracks, which is a an extraordinary record. And there are legions of lists of albums, paintings, poems, whatever you care to, where they reflect the person's turmoil. And people, I'm sure you've heard of people who deliberately make that turmoil in their lives because they know it makes some kind of great art. They get something out of it, not just a negative thing, but a positive thing. So I think it's an extraordinary record, and and that it's one of those things, isn't it? And that sort of 1970, that period that we talk about a lot, where recording live in the studio, bunches of musicians, that fortuitous meeting with Dwayne Allman, getting him to come in the studio and play on it because they went to see him in concert, and they're kind of, I don't know, this is kind of magic there for me in all of that, those kind of fortuitous meetings and all those people growing up, at the same time, all those extraordinary musicians and stuff, and creating, coming together to create something, very special, and it's one of the, it's one of those things where that kind of zeitgeist is there, that kind of creative, is in the air and those things, and those being able to do that, in spite of having addiction problems and things is quite extraordinary in my books, and producing it in spite of all of that, not because of it. And as we discussed, I think there's a lot less drug taking during those sessions than previously had been suggested, we think.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Simon, because there was none, and Bobby has cleared that up. They were straight. They were turning up to the studio, 10 o'clock in the morning, Brody. They had a few joints and a few drinks afterwards, but they weren't taking cocaine and heroin and zoning out, and you can't. But it's interesting how that mythology has been perpetuated. And we've spoken about this, Brad, too, in the course of those shows that we did, where journalists up until 2010, 2012 were talking about that. There was drugs all over the studio and stuff like that. And Dowd himself came out and said, no, these guys were sharp. They had fresh shirts on. They were cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I think it shows in the music, and it shows in the quality of the songs, and the quality of the playing, and the I don't think you can do that if you're completely out of it. To be honest, it's not.
Yeah,
it's
and
not
especially on the songs. I mean, just to you've got to the lyrics to Bell Bottom Blues, or the lyrics to or Layla. I think that was like that was his focus, and you could that was a very deliberate and emotional, passionate, I don't sincere thing where I was glad to hear those interviews, because you just that kind of stuff doesn't come out when you're foggy with whatever.
You're right, Brody. And in that film, he talks about the 12 bars. He talks about, again, you've hit the nail on the head. He was writing these songs for Patty, to give to Patty, because he was sure that when she heard these songs, she was going to come to him.
Mm.
No pressure. But he wouldn't have been the first person to write a song to attract a woman, or write a poem to attract a woman. I mean, it's sort of it's one of the classic themes, isn't it?
Yeah,
But
I think over that course of his life, at that particular point, should I say, in his life, I think music was how he channeled his emotions and feelings. I'm not sure he was able to, vocalize it properly without putting it into a song, maybe. because he was, he had a lot of complexities about himself, and maybe that's how he operated. And obviously, he thought, "Yep, I'll put it in a song. Patty's going to fall at her knees for me, and she'll be mine." But it's a very complex situation, the whole thing, really, when you think about the Patty Boyd situation being one of his good mates' wives. It's a very, I mean, you think about it, if it was happening in this day and age, you'd be like, what the hell's going on? So, yeah, it's a very, very strange situation all around, really. But I think Clapton, to put it into song, Bell Bottom Blues, for example,
Yeah.
he's putting everything about himself that he can't vocalize properly into a song. And I think that's the beauty of music, especially for a songwriter to be able to, put it into a song. And I know for a fact, just with particular things I've done, you write it in a song, it's like putting a full stop, putting a bookend to it, and you're letting it go, because you can actually, it's a cathartic experience. You can actually just move on from that.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And the Bell Bottom Blues story, folks, is in the book, in the biography, and we'll share it here. So Patty asks Eric, because she knows that he's going to the States to do some tour. I can't remember exactly what the tour was, Brad, but she asks him if he could bring back some Bell Bottom jeans, which were in fashion, and Eric said yes. So, again, we've said this before, guys. You listen to this great song and you've got no real sort of, it's great, but then you hear about it, Brody. It's actually got a it's like, go and get me some Bell Bottom jeans from the States. So Bell Bottom Blues. So she knows, exactly what the song's about when she hears it. It's incredible. One other thing that I'd like to share with you guys that Bobby shared on his channel, and we've touched upon it a couple of times, and we're great Dwayne Allman fans here, guys, so please don't see this as a criticism of Dwayne Allman. But one thing that really blew me away was when Bobby was talking about how Dwayne couldn't jam. He said that Dwayne Allman was this, everything was worked out beforehand. Everything was to a pattern, and everything was prearranged. The arrangement was already there, Brody. And when they got together and started trying to jam after the album was released, Dwayne couldn't do it, and Bobby was blown away by it.
It's one of those amazing things, isn't it, that you kind of think of the Allman Brothers as being, one of the great kind of jam bands, the great long things, and but I think you're right, Andrew, that it plays into that thing. It may sound like that, but actually, a lot of it's a lot more worked out than you think it is. And I understand that. If you,
100%.
if you want, if it wants to be good every night, then actually to some extent you'll work his stuff out. And I think we've talked the same at length about Jimmy Page and having play. If you're going to do a 35-minute Dazed and Confused, but it clearly it has sections that are we may not necessarily know what he's going to play to the nearest note, but definite sections to it, definite bits where he's going to do a similar thing, stuff.
Yeah. I think we've raised some very good points here, and there's plenty of more that we can talk about if we were to do a whole show on the biography or the your life in 12 bars. I bet you that would be a quite a deep show, guys.
Well, I'm going to just throw up some picks, guys. So this is obviously one of the famous picks from that Layla sessions there with these great musicians, and there's Skydog there.
Yep. Awesome.
looking pretty good for 80, isn't he? This is taken in
Eric,
2016 though, so
Nah,
yeah.
I think
a stripling of 71.
it's a credit to him to be out there still performing at his age and just playing music and doing what he did. And like watching him last year, I thought his voice was outstanding and his playing was outstanding. It's credit to him.
Absolutely, he's been very lucky, hasn't he? You know, I know he's got a bit of what's it?
I know
Peripheral neuropathy,
Jim went to see Clapton the night before at Royal Albert Hall, where I was. And it's a pity we didn't actually get the same night. That would have been great to catch up.
Just a guitar, what, on a Fender Deluxe? Is that what he was playing, Brad?
I think what's his tweed? What's he got? Is it a deluxe? The Eric Clapton signature model? Is it a deluxe?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it famous as you
had a wild
talked earlier? Oh, hey, steady. A whole one, yes. Hello, tuna. Yes. But I think it's interesting, that when he played with Joe Bonamassa in 2009, Joe Bonamassa says, doesn't he, that he just turned up with did he turn up on his own? I think he just turned up on his own with a Blues Deluxe, and and a signature Strat, plugged in.
It was a twin tweed. The
A twin was it? Thank you, Brody.
Yeah, and when Fender made those runs of the EC amps, there was basically a Champ, a Deluxe, and a Tweed, and they called it the I forget the little Champ. I mean, it's back there, and then the Deluxe, they called it the Tremolux.
Tremolux.
A little bit of it had the tremolo in it and a little more something in the circuit. He wanted was a little more throbby, than the other one. And then with the twin, actually, it's a bit dark in here, but that's the twin of it. And that's, he shows up with a Daphne blue, Eric Clapton Strat and like all the stuff. And Bonamassa said it still had the card on the top of it. It was just off the shelf.
That's right. Yes.
Just grabbed it, tools out of the box and put them on stage, and it sounds like Eric Clapton.
Look at that.
Royal Albert Hall.
Home of Eric.
That was last year. Almost a year ago now. I can't believe it.
Already.
Wow.
That guy's unrecognizable just about.
Had to get a haircut and get a real job.
What happened to the hair? Get a haircut, get a job.
Had to get a real job, yeah. No.
Yes. Look, guys, appreciate you getting together, hanging out, and talking about Eric Clapton with us. And we've had some great comments in the chat too. Jim, who we know has been on the channel many times, is an Eric Clapton nut, and Tony as well, who we met through Jim. So Tony's becoming a regular on our chat as well. And Tony, if you ever want to come on and participate in a hangout like this, you have a permanent invite to do that. It would be our pleasure to have you jump on. 100%. But one of the great things though about this channel, guys, is our invitations to people. We're sincere about that. And the invitation is always there. And if Eric, if you want to come on, if you ever want to come on and hang out with an Australian, a Kiwi, a fellow Englishman, and probably seven or eight other people as well that will want to come on the show. We can certainly guarantee you'll have a good time. And unfortunately, we'll have to talk about music though. It won't be watches or cars. Most of the conversation will be about music. So Yeah, that's the only pitfall, Brad.
And it will be, you know, period correct. We'll talk about the period correct instead of it being, you know, oh no, it's 89. No, and Eric's correcting. Yeah, I think it's 91, 92.
No. Yeah. At least we'll get that right.
And
I think it's really important to say that
Nathan East,
if you do come on.
If you want to come on, Nathan East.
Yes,
look at that. Oh,
you want to come on? Thank you for liking my Royal Albert Hall reel on Instagram. But if you want to come on and have a chat, you're more than welcome.
DM him, Brad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the meantime, it would be a fun show for all the guys, you know, all the other Clapton nuts too. You know, we could have an episode on just memorabilia, you know, the concert programs, and I've got you know, the books and old articles and you know, call it a scrapbook of, you know, that kind of stuff over the years, but then also our gear, you know, all the Clapton stuff from, you know, Martins to Strats to the amps to you know, I even have one of those Digitech Crossroads pedals that I found because you know.
Yep.
And so, you know, things like that would be a fun chat too, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And we're organic fans, and you know that's the key. So getting back to Nathan East. Nathan East is fantastic, incredible, isn't he? He's prolific on social media. And what I like about the guy, you know, he goes to church and he comes out after church every Sunday and he says, praying for peace. You know,
yeah.
What a message.
Yeah, he's let's just say he seems to come across as a really peaceful, wonderful man.
Oh.
Yeah. Incredible. Yeah. In the union of bass players.
He's got a signature head out that's been released, I think this week. Yeah.
Laney.
Laney.
Oh, yeah, Laney.
Yeah.
I might go and check it out.
Yeah. Here's something I found out this week. You know the bass player Leland Sklar.
Yes.
You know, he's played with Jay, played with everybody. You know, done sessions. How many albums do you think he's played on?
Over 1,000.
You got to be.
He's played on more than 21,000 albums.
Gee.
Can you back? He's like an album practically. He says that when he comes off stage now, he goes back to his hotel room and there's something will have come in, you know, and so he'll play on 3 or 4 tracks in his hotel room, just recording, and send them off between doing gigs. Quite extraordinary.
21,000.
21,000 albums he's played on.
That's something remarkable.
As a session player since the mid to late 60s. Yeah. It's extraordinary, is it? As a what? That's amazing, isn't it? Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I want to do the math to find out how that's possible.
It's about 350 albums a year, Brody, something like that. Yeah.
That's an album a day.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
but an album a day
without weekends.
Yeah,
including weekends.
Yeah,
only weekends. Yeah, session play, and he's only ever got points on one album, because clearly as a session player you only get a session fee to do it.
Sure.
But he got point. He didn't ask for it. He said it's absolutely, you don't ask for points. You know, the room goes silent if you do, so you just get your fee. But he got a Phil Collins live album. He got points. He didn't ask for them. They just gave him points for the Phil Collins live. But yeah, it's just extraordinary.
Well, go and check his channel out, folks. I do check him out now and then. But he was prolific. He was one of the guys, Brody, you know, that we were talking about that took advantage of that global thing about 5 years ago. He got on his YouTube channel and he played a lot of riffs on a lot of songs that he did, and he spoke and talked about, you know, what was going down. And if you're a bass player, they're invaluable. But if you're a musician, it's just real gold there, Brad. You know, just go and mine it.
Yeah, I watched him every day during that COVID thing.
Yes,
when he did it, and he gets to Nashville here a fair amount too.
Does he?
Yeah, he does a lot of sessions here too.
Doesn't he live in Nashville?
No, he's in LA, I think. He's a California guy. But comes back here because a number of the things he talked about, actually he mentioned a couple of the like contemporary Christian artists over the years, like Amy Grant and Stephen Curtis Chapman. And he went the whole catalog of James Brown to, you know, them to what were some of the other ones that he did? Linda Ronstadt, I think he was on, you know, some of those. But and Phil Collins, you know, he talked a lot about Phil Collins and James Taylor. And the first time that I ever figured out what's this name, Leland Sklar, you know, was on the first Richard Marx record. You know, because I'd always read the liner notes. He played on that one like in 1987.
Correct.
So, and I got to see him with Toto about 7 or 8 years ago at the Ryman here. Wow. And that band, they were on fire. Just unbelievable.
Yeah. John ZD351 has got the producer switch. So he's got a great video where he talks about that, how he's got a switch on his bass. And and it's when the producer says, oh, you know, we can't quite hear you, Brad. We can't quite, you know, there's no mid. Oh, you wait there. And then Brad flicks the switch. Oh, Brad, fantastic, bro. You're on the money.
And it doesn't do anything.
Not connected to anything, is it? Isn't there's another famous story about a set player called, I think it's Tommy Tedesco, who was, they go, the producer's like, he's playing on a record and the producer goes, yeah, can you do it on mandolin? He goes, yeah, no worries. Bends down, picks up, plays sort of, you know, mandolin. Like, yeah, can you do it on an acoustic guitar? Yeah, bends down. He always thinks picking up the same, he's just picking up his same guitar, but just playing it differently. He's like, apparently he did this like did a load to the, you know, can you do it on a 12 string? Yeah, no worries, hold on. Just pick up the same guitar. You just make like you're picking up something different, but you aren't.
You know, there are always a lot of tricks like that, even on like live things. As a guitar player, you know, you go in and you're too loud before you even turn your amp on. And you know, and now if you can even use an amp, most of the places you have to go, you know, direct and wear the, you know, the in-ears and all that. But over the years, I've always been deliberate to go in and one, you know, not go in with a 100-watt Marshall or something like that, but to go in with something in that, you know, it's a little smaller, like a deluxe reverb or something or whatever. But every single time when they do line checks or sound checks, I would always keep it low enough where I knew the sound guy would say, can you give me just a little bit more of that? Just so I could hear him say to everybody, you know, the amp wasn't loud enough. Hey, can you repeat that?
Brady, stop giving away my secrets. I do that every gig. I play really soft. The level of the snare I turn down under it. Oh, can you turn up, Brad? I make it so the sound guy says it in front of all the band. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
You know, Brody, famously, you know, I have my PV Delta Blues that I play with, right? Before that, I had a high watt 100-watt, right, with 412 cab, and it was just impossible. You couldn't play in a pub in it because you just have all the walls out, you know. But I'm on 3, so I'm like, I thought this is just hopeless. So I went and got the PV Delta Blues, and my saying in the band ever since has been, I'll change it for a bigger amp when somebody comes up and says, "Can you turn up?" In 30 years, nobody's ever come up and said, "Can you turn up?"
Oh my! So.
Saved my back anyway. Nothing else.
Awesome.
That high watt 100-watt was something else. but it was just impossible. It's just impossible to play in a pub or a small club. I was just mad.
So our good friend Tony did point out that Eric's one of his
Yes.
longest band members, Chris Stainton, celebrated a birthday last week. So we want to do a special shout out to Chris too. Thank you, Chris, for the contribution that you've given over the decades, not the years, it's decades. So yeah, incredible keyboardist. So boys, thank you very much for jumping on and hanging out and talking all things Eric Clapton together. It's been a privilege catching up with you guys, but not just for this show, over the years, guys. As I opened up the show with, Eric Clapton was one of the key components that got us all together, and a lot of us in the chat are here because of the music that Eric Clapton has been part of and has produced over the years. And this channel exists mainly because of that reason. So the fact that we're here celebrating his 80th birthday, God bless you, Eric Clapton. And, he's still playing, and we look forward to hearing and seeing more of what he's got to offer for us as fans over the next few years. Clearly, he's going to continue doing what the Rolling Stones are doing too. They're just going to continue playing. That's just,
absolutely.
No sign of stopping. So I'm going to get you, Brad, to say a couple of words, and then Brody, and then the Rock Professor can do a shout out, and we'll let people get back to what they're doing. Brad.
Yeah, well, Brody, thank you for joining us, my friend. It's been great having you on. Mr. Eric Clapton. We call you Mr. Eric Clapton in the background, in the green room. You've got a guitar collection and a collection of amps and everything like that I'm sure we all would die for. So thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts and stories and everything. It's been a pleasure having you on. So thank you very much. And thank you to anyone who's watching that hasn't subscribed. Please hit the subscribe button. We don't usually ask for people to subscribe, but if you come this far and you've just been listening to four Eric Clapton fans waffle on for an hour and a half, then please hit the subscribe button, because there'll be plenty more to come. And I'll pass it over to Brody. Brody, do you want to go next?
First, thank you all. My sincerest thanks. This, this whole community, started with Eric Clapton. I think is how, we'd all stumbled onto each other. And again, I say this all the time, and it sounds hokey, but what a great, community of people, on here. I love to just, watch the replays and the chats and everyone. It's what a great gang of people to celebrate shared interests with, and enjoy the same things. It's like we're some people go to Renaissance fairs and comic book stores and motorcycle swaps and things like that, and here we are talking gear and artists and things that are inspiring to us, and it's really great to get other people's inputs, and then to hear you just hear things that you didn't think about, and to for everyone to be impacted by somebody like Eric Clapton, who would you even play guitar and have spent your whole life pursuing that craft, that art, that passion, if it wouldn't have been for a guy like him. And I know he'll probably just, if he'd ever hear that, he would just maybe shrug it off and say, you guys are, fanboys, or why would you, you're crazy to, to think that. But you go back, and it's like that movie, It's a Wonderful Life, when George Bailey is, you see when Clarence shows him that if he wasn't there, how things would have been. And I'd rather not imagine, this musical world with with Eric Clapton not having been there. And it's, unfortunately, you start thinking about the ages of some of these guys, and it's one that really stung, was BB King. And unfortunately, I think just we're coming up on a lot of these guys in that same vintage, not being here. So I think I hope that they, hear how much appreciation, and inspiration that they've given to everybody on here, and to to thank them, for that, to let them know how much how the direction they've sent people on their own paths that may not have started if it would have been for them. So, I'm not a fanboy, but like I said early, my whole Eric Clapton thing is multi-dimensional growing up. It's a soundtrack of my life. It reminds me of my parents, of experiences as a kid. And of course, who wouldn't want to, just pick up a guitar and try, to play like him. And, what a great milestone. And just wow. It's like, I feel like, it's his birthday, and I feel like he's given us all birthday gifts, so yeah. Thank you, Eric Clapton.
Great point. Happy birthday, Eric. Yeah. Great point, Brody.
I agree, and I just put my 2 minutes. I think that two things stand out for me, Eric. One is that influence that he had, on, British blues rock, in the mid '60s, with his Marshall and his Les Paul. I think, you can't overestimate that he was the first to do it, put that together, and have that, get that sound, turn it all the way up, and and bands have been doing it for 60 years since, that sound, chasing that sound, and he was the man who did that, and that can never. And also, I think that the other thing I take away is that his focus and his studiousness about the blues, and about and the time he took to study all those blues records, and the time he took to learn the licks, and learn, you're learning how people play things. Remember, you're learning them not via the magic of YouTube or anything like that. You're having to sit down with a record, go over it, go back over it. So I don't know, slow it down to 16 or whatever. But and I think that that when he found the thing that he loved doing, he put all the academic effort into perfecting, perfecting his craft, and getting himself to the point where he was a great player, and he's continued to build on that for the next 60 years. So hats off to him for doing that. I think that's what I take from it. Yeah. Still going, and if you're still going when you're 80, you're doing all right, aren't you? Still out there, doing his stuff.
Still rocking.
Right. I'll just chat. Mission RD100. Thanks for joining. Arvin, of course. Thank you very much. Mark Tanner. Great to see you, Mark. Dal Ace. There's a new name, so welcome, Dal, and great to see you. And thanks for your comments. Tony Bone, of course. Jazz Under 50. Jim. Thanks, Jim, for dropping by. We've got 20 people watching, so that's fantastic. So thanks to everyone who watched, even if you didn't comment. That's absolutely fine. Ellen, Nelson, Arvin, thank you guys for joining, and thanks for all your good wishes about my surgery on Wednesday.
Yeah,
I'll be back with the bolts, probably not next week. All
the best with that song.
Yeah. Thank you very much. All right.
Hit the notification button, folks, and if you want to find out what we're going to be doing on the channel this time next week, Brad and I will either be here talking about some of the gear that the Black Crows used with Jimmy Page, or the Rock Professor will be here and we'll be doing part 2. So we'll have a chat over the next couple of days. Actually, Simon, you probably won't be on next Sunday, will you?
No, let's say no, because I don't know.
Okay.
Apparently, apparently it's going to affect my voice and other stuff as well, which, well, amusing might not be. And I might not be in a position. It's like if you've got a bit of post-op pain and stuff, concentration could be difficult. So it's let's do it the week after. I'll be all right about that.
All right, so Brad and I will be here next week, folks, and we'll be talking about gear, a bit of Jimmy Page and a bit of Black Crows. So we're going to end the show now. Brody, thank you, brother, for jumping on and hanging out with us. I know it's late where you are, but we appreciate it, and thank you for taking some time out and hanging out with us.
My pleasure. The pleasure is all mine.
Lovely to have you, Brody. Lovely to have you. Fantastic. Yeah. Thanks for staying up. Just I've got a couple more names, Andrew, before we go. We've got Bluefen. Well, I don't recognise. That's another new name. So welcome, Bluefen. Thank you for joining the conference. Nelson Rodriguez, of course. Dwight Bailey as well was on earlier. So thanks, Dwight, for dropping by. Great to see you. And I think that's everybody who commented. Let's hope so. Dallas.
Awesome.
So I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
I'll have some videos next week of the Rock Professor, the Backdoor Man, and I talking about Clapton from a few years ago. We'll dig some out with Brody as well and Michael. So we'll reminisce about some of the videos that we've done on the channel over the years as well. We're out of here.
Take it away, boss.